Hey everybody, it's Book of Katherine. I hope you're doing well. I just was watching a Dr. Phil episode. I should do something on Dr. Phil and just tell you my thoughts on him because there's a few things that I think before ever watching one of his episodes. Well, number one, I guess I really want to say that I've been seeing more comments lately. I'm noticing a continuing thread about Dr. Phil saying people think that you either get paid to be on that show, which you don't. Sorry for everyone who thinks that people get paid to be on that show. You don't. And for people who think that they go on there for fame, they don't. As someone who has been through the medical industry, and I totally, every one of those families, like I get why they're there. When you hear that they've been through all these hospitals, a lot of people come to that show at the end of their rope after trying a ton of doctors and things like that. You guys know, I actually, right before things started getting better for me, I remember that last 6 months. Remember when I said the wind was starting to go away and I started getting really scared? I mean, I was considering contacting because I was just like, they'll have the resources. Like, they'll have the resources. I should look into it. Because I was just like, there aren't any answers. Like, I'm not getting answers. I really started getting worried. And when you get that bad, you're not thinking national television. You're not thinking that at all. You actually don't want that kind of fame for that kind of attention. But when you get that desperate, it's hard unless you've been there. You just, a lot of times it's life or death, the stress situations and things like that. And then the second thing I wanted to say about Dr. Phil is that a lot of the situations you see on there are like the drama triangle, where people are caught, and you'll see it right on tape. You'll see them trapped between persecutor, rescuer, victim, and that can be a really intoxicating triangle to be in. And so somebody will say something to one person, they'll say something, well, you do this, and it'll be that it's persecutor mode, and then that makes the other person say, go persecutor right back. You do this, and then all of a sudden that person goes victim. They were just a persecutor, and then boom, they go victim, and they go, well, I didn't know, you did this to me, and I didn't know. And then there's a third person in there that goes and rescues one of them. And so you see all these people switching between all these roles. And when you get in a high stress situation, it can do that. You can get into this drama triangle thing where you're just rotating between every sentence you say, you're playing one of those roles. You're playing a persecutor or a victim or a rescuer. And no matter where you are, if you're normally the rescuer, you end up switching in the other two roles. And I remember when I was getting better, I remember specifically when I started understanding that drama triangle. I was in therapy and stuff like that, and I remember I had to stop watching like the Real Housewives of Atlanta. Like, I was still watching Bravo TV at that time, and it suddenly just dawned on me that that is what I was getting out of the show. Was like, that was the drama. When they say it's all about the drama, it really is. Everybody is just trapped in that drama triangle. And I remember they let go one of the ladies, and they said the reason she was so upset because in the first season, and she was upset, she said the reason they gave her was she's too human. And never forgot that. I never forgot that, because I was like, exactly. But that had been after I'd stopped watching the show, or during, or somewhere in there. And I remember it was hard for me to put down the remote and not watch that channel, because I was so addicted to that drama of in one of those things. But I realized that if I kept watching it, it reinforced those behaviors in my life. And the way to get out of that is that you have to somewhat put down the stick, is the way you put it. They said, you know how they say it takes two to tango? If you have a stick, and my therapist did this great thing with me. He was like, here, take this long stick. And he had my husband and I yank it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then he was like, now close your eyes. And we were going back and forth. And then he said, now one of you just drop it. And then he dropped it. And this feeling happens inside of you when you just drop that stick. And that's the feeling you have when you leave the drama triangle. There's the codependency that happens, the feeling of loss, of like, I'm not doing that tug and war anymore, that communication with that other person. But there's also a sense of freedom. And I really encourage you to try that exercise. Changed my life. That exercise changed my life. And I believe he invented it, like he figured it out. I remember he's really excited because he had just figured that out. And I remember it really helped us. And so when I get into things like that online, um, and I feel myself, one of the ways I learned to recognize it was if I'm having a really hard time writing a response and I like keep rewriting it and rewriting it and rewriting it, I realize I'm in that trauma triangle in my head. And I'm like, you just got to drop the stick. You got to walk away. It's not worth it. So like writing an email, I'm like, you got to come back when you're clear headed and you're out of the drama triangle to write that email. So anyway, but there's a lot of terms from what I understand. Well, I'll say that later. Let me find out if that's safe. Anyway, so now part 3. Now that I could not help but say all the things I thought about Dr. Phil. Yeah, I probably should just do a second video. So those are just my thoughts on Dr. Phil, on the drama triangle, and on people going on there. Obviously, there are people going on there to get fame. Like lately, I've just been like, right, like, because things come out afterwards, and the families are, families are trying to get shows. Families are, I mean, a lot of exposés are happening ever since the Catch Me Outside girl, another one. But now there's a lot of like paid channels on YouTube that just review Dr. Phil videos and just use it as a source of like, and I'm just like, yeah, that it all plays really. So of course people are going to get on it. If you can be YouTube famous, like right now, some people think that's better than the other. And they're like, oh, I'd love to be part of a, Dr. Phil hash up video. And so, yeah, they'll do anything. And I haven't bothered trying to talk to anybody to try and see if I can get confirmation on whether or not what's real and what's fake or whatever. But like, I remember one that I saw recently is like, it was a mom and son, and they were being really dramatic and all this stuff and going out partying. And then all of a sudden they brought up their fashion show and like, well, you didn't bring up my fashion show. And I was like, fashion show? Because I was like, this is really weird. This doesn't make sense to me. And then the son was all pouty. And then right as the camera starts to close, it's still on his face. And he just has like, you can find the episode, I'm sure. His face just dramatically changes like, yeah, we did it. And I was like, right. Like he was just like, boom. He thought the camera was done. The music stopped. And then he was like, snap happy. And I was like, right. Advertisement for the, for the fashion show or whatever. And I don't, you just have to, you can tell who's desperate, use your gut, but there's no money in it. That's why people are going on to promote their fashion shows. They're not getting paid for it. They're doing something else out there. But if they're desperate, they're freaking desperate. You don't want to be on there. And I know some people can't imagine putting their face out there for fame. They're like, it has to be money. I'd never do that. But most of the people I've said that have said those sorts of things are also very, I'm hanging upside down right now. That's why my face is getting red. But most of those people are also really young. They haven't lived enough of life yet to really suffer. You know what I mean? There's a whole generation that has been immune to a lot of like life suffering. Because they have a lot of people, as you see on the show, they have a lot of people around them that pick up the slack for their own actions. You know what I mean? And we have a state right now that takes all of our taxes and things like that and pays people to sit and do a YouTube channel now. Ironically, I'm like, that's ironically, please donate down below. I don't have it. Either one. Don't get to do either one. And it's hard to imagine suffering or being desperate if you haven't been in one of those circumstances. And I think most people understand that, but I have seen just enough of it on YouTube now. I've been seeing it over the last 6 months, especially with these new channels, and they're just like, oh, money. And I've known for a while that there's no money in it. And so, have some compassion if you can. But yeah, I was like, I'm so desperate. I'm just ready. And I got to be honest, my head was nowhere near about Dr. Phil and the fact that it was national television. I was tunnel vision on he has resources. And a lot of these families too just don't have the money. I mean, you see them just dying for the money when I say the money, I mean the money for the resources, because some of these places are $50,000, which is why I say, in lieu of international charities, which we now know just go to, wealthy dictators and things like that, and don't actually drug running and all this other fun stuff. Can't believe it. But a great thing that you can donate to are like drug rehabilitation centers, and opioid crisis centers. And if you don't know of one you can trust, try the ranches. Utah has a ton of these ranches. It's not just the one that Dr. Phil uses, but there's a bunch of them. And that's one of the things I made a joke recently. I figured it out, and I was just like, all these leftists, like all these elite leftists, like they're so left. And then I realized when I was doing my sanctuary cities map, I was like Utah, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like that's where they send all the kids. They send them to Utah, like the most religious and strict, area to get their kids rehabbed for healthy living. And I'm like, oh, why didn't I see that before? I don't know. It's really hard through all the filters. You know what I mean? So anyway, my husband's home. I'm going to go, and I'll try and do another video where I tell you what I was actually thinking. It has to do with disability, not Social Security disability, but actually being able to walk and getting a wheelchair versus getting a walker because of an episode I saw. All right. I love you guys so much. Bye.